It was one of those overcast days when the sky seems unsure if it wants to rain or clear up, casting a gloomy shadow over everything. I was driving down a long, winding road that cut through the heart of dense woods, the kind of place where each tree seemed to have its own ancient story. I was headed for a small, remote motel on the outskirts of a tiny town, far from the usual hustle and bustle. My name is Emily, and I write crime novels for a living. The solitude of such places helps me think, and the silence is my ally when weaving the complex plots of my stories. This particular motel was quaint, barely more than a handful of rooms and rarely fully booked. It seemed like the perfect retreat to finish my latest manuscript, a story about a detective on the trail of a clever and elusive villain. As I checked in, the quietness of the motel struck me immediately. Just a few cars parked outside, suggesting other guests were few and far between. The owner, a friendly enough man with a gentle smile, handed me the keys to my room, mentioning offhandedly that I'd probably find the place to be just what I needed for a good week of uninterrupted writing. Little did I know, my stay at this seemingly peaceful motel would turn out to be anything but quiet. As I settled into my room, the trees outside swayed as if whispering warnings, and the walls, thin as paper, seemed to absorb sounds in a way that made the silence even more pronounced. It was the perfect setting for a crime novel, and soon it would become the scene of my own eerie story. The first couple of days passed quietly enough as I immersed myself in my writing, but I definitely felt there was something off about the isolation of the place. The first sign that caught my attention was at the motel's diner. Every time I sat down for a meal, I noticed a solitary figure in the corner. It was hard to make out details, but each time I left, the figure would stand and leave just after me. At first, I thought it was just a coincidence, but as it continued to happen, it felt more like a pattern, a deliberate shadowing of my movements. I started feeling more uneasy one night when the quiet was disrupted by the sound of footsteps outside my door. It was late, well past midnight, and no one should have been wandering around. Curious and a bit alarmed, I tiptoed to the window and peered out. I caught a glimpse of a shadow darting away, disappearing into the darkness that clung to the edges of the motel. The next morning, I mentioned it to the motel owner. He shrugged it off, suggesting it was probably just another guest who got the time mixed up. His casual dismissal did little to ease my growing apprehension. Then, the notes started appearing. The first one was slipped under my door while I was deep in a particularly challenging chapter. It read, "Nice story." Simple, harmless on the surface, but the fact that I had no idea who it was from made my skin crawl. More notes followed, each with similar messages like, "Can't wait to see how it ends." None of them were threatening, yet the anonymity of the sender, leaving notes at my door, started to disturb me deeply. Each little piece of paper felt like a silent whisper in the dark, making me wonder who was watching, waiting, and wanting something from me. One night, as I was finishing up some writing, a chilling sound pierced the silence. Someone was tampering with my door lock. My heart leaped to my throat as I froze, listening. "Who's there?" I called out sharply. The noise halted instantly, but the silence that followed was even more terrifying, suggesting that my call had startled someone away from my door. The thought that someone had tried to enter my room shook me deeply. Frantically, I picked up the phone and dialed the front desk, seeking some explanation or reassurance. The night clerk's voice wavered as he informed me that, disturbingly, there were no other guests checked into the rooms near mine. The implication hit me hard. The person trying to get into my room had to be someone from inside the motel, someone who knew the layout and had access to the keys. My hands trembling, I reached for my cell phone to call the police, only to find that it had no service, a not uncommon issue in such a remote location but frustratingly ill-timed. As I tried to think of what to do next, the sound of the door lock clicking sent a spike of fear through me. He was back, and this time, he had gotten in. I quickly retreated to the bathroom, locking the door behind me. I looked around for anything to use as a weapon. I grabbed a heavy shampoo bottle and a metal nail file, crude but necessary weapons if it came to defending myself. I stood behind the door, waiting for any sign of movement outside. The silence stretched on, broken only by the soft, eerie creaks of the motel settling around me. I was terrified, but determined to protect myself at all costs. The door to the bathroom shuddered as the stalker threw his weight against it. I gripped the hairdryer tightly, my other hand holding the hot curling iron, ready to defend myself. As the door finally burst open, I felt a rush of adrenaline. The stalker lunged, but I swung the hairdryer hard, hitting him across the face. He staggered back, and I didn't hesitate to play to my advantage, pressing the hot curling iron against his arm as he tried to grab me. He howled in pain and stumbled, giving me just enough time to slip past him and out of the bathroom. I sprinted from my room to the front desk, my breath coming in sharp gasps. The night was quiet, eerily silent as I ran. Bursting into the lobby, I shouted for help. The motel owner, awakened by the commotion, quickly came to my aid. He immediately saw the panic in my eyes and the desperation in my voice and called the police without hesitation. The police arrived surprisingly swiftly, and I explained what had happened, my words tumbling out in a frantic rush. They apprehended the stalker on the motel grounds, still reeling from the burns and the blow. It turned out he was a disgruntled former employee who had unresolved issues with the motel's management. He had been lurking around, fueled by a vendetta against the owner. The police took him away, and the relief that washed over me was palpable. The danger was over, the threat removed. I was safe, thanks to my quick thinking and the timely response of the motel owner and police. After everything that happened, I knew I couldn't stay at the motel any longer. I packed my things and headed home early the next morning, the events of the previous night replaying in my mind with every mile I put between myself and that place. Though shaken and still feeling the aftershocks of fear, I found within myself a new determination. As I drove, I thought about how I could use my terrifying experience as the foundation for my next novel. It would be a story of survival, of a woman's fight against a hidden danger, mirroring the ordeal I had just lived through. By the time I reached home, the outline of a new book was forming, each chapter fueled by the adrenaline and resolve that had kept me alive. This real-life horror had transformed into a driving force for my writing. The book that emerged became a bestseller, resonating with readers who found the terror of what could happen in such ordinary settings chillingly plausible. In sharing my story, I wanted to remind everyone that sometimes the scariest tales are not those of ghosts or monsters, but those that could unfold in the quietest, most unexpected places. The scariest stories are sometimes the ones that can happen to anyone, anywhere.